once I knew what to do, then it wasn't really a matter of if it was going to work or not. It was a matter of how long would it take.
I had just gotten 3 yeses. Of course, 4 yeses felt like the natural next step. And that's like when my season of no's started. It was just like, no, 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 one right after the other. And this was probably like one of the very first time of 100 times that I cried hard on one of my coaching calls.
Welcome to The Deep Coach, the podcast where we explore the transformational journeys that shape us and that propel us to change the world. I'm your host, Jonathan Edmida, and in each episode, we sit down with those who have journeyed into the depths of spiritual transformation and who are now reshaping the world through their presence and their work. In listening to these incredible individuals, you'll find insight, inspiration, and practical tools that'll support your journey as a coach and as a human being. Today, I'm joined by two extraordinary guests that I'm really excited for you all to get to know. These two women are absolute powerhouses, as you'll come to find. They've not only transformed their own lives through coaching, but have helped hundreds of others do the same by bridging the gap between coaching and successful entrepreneurship. For all of you coaches in private practice or looking to build your private practice, this episode is especially for you. Laura Minard and Shelby Kurz met in 2018 during their nurse coach certification program. And if you were wondering, yes, there is a thing called nurse coaches out there. And these are nurses who are becoming coaches and taking their support of patients and clients to the next level. So in the course, they were assigned as each other's first peer coaching partners. And that partnership turned out to be life-changing as they both encouraged each other to take a leap of faith, quitting their jobs and going all in on their private practice. We'll talk more about that leap of faith and other details of their journey during this episode. In short, they were so successful that they went into business together to teach the art of marketing, sales, and business creation in a way that feels deeply aligned with the inner work of coaching. And their business boomed into the 7 figures. That's right, 7 figures. Oh, and by the way, they did all of this while having small children and being the primary breadwinners in their home. So like I said, these are incredible women. They're actually going to be offering the center's Deep Coaching Intensive to their community this year in 2025. And by the end of the year, we're looking to launch their business development program for our coaches. So a lot of really beautiful synergy and collaboration here. In today's episode, we're diving into their personal journeys, what it really takes to build a thriving coaching business, and why they believe that entrepreneurship is one of the most profound spiritual paths you can walk. I have said enough. Let's dive right in. Laura, Shelby, thank you for being here with me. I'm curious, and I'm sure everyone listening is curious, what set off your transformational journeys? And I know that's a very big question, but given that you're in the world of deep coaching, what is it that set off this grand adventure that you've all been on?
I mean, there's like 10 layers to that answer, but what comes to mind immediately is how I found out about Leon. And I had been in coaching for 2.5 years, and we had been asked to speak at a live event in front of a lot of coaches. And so I was developing what I wanted to speak to the audience about, and I wanted to speak about self-concept because I think for me, as soon as I realized that I didn't want to go find myself, I wanted to create myself. I really became aware of the importance of self-concept. And I was like a Facebook group, and I was like, who's got the best resources for self-concept? And Leon's name came up. And so I just went to Amazon and bought the book. And then I read the book the first time in like 4 days and then told everybody I knew about the book, knowing very little about it, what it actually was. And so that's how I came in contact with Leon's work. But I had been a study of A Course in Miracles. I had studied A Course in Miracles at 17. And I had always had like a deep spiritual longing, and that didn't seem to fit a lot of different contexts. So I think for me, I was always a seeker spiritually. And then I feel like Leon's work is where coaching and spiritual seeking collides. And so that's why it resonated so much for me personally. Yeah.
And Laura, what do you think it was about your disposition as a young woman that had you a seeker so young?
Mystical experiences that no one could understand, and just trying to find some measure of what had happened and what I believed. And I'd had, like, the only thing I could say is like walking near death experiences of different, of just very strange experiences. And we weren't religious. So I was looking for an explanation of what had happened or what I believed, and was just seeking for it anywhere I could. And A Course in Miracles was at that time was like, as soon as I read it, I was like, oh, this person gets it. The author of this book gets it, which is, interesting. And then, of course, A Way of Mastery was a book that came a little bit later. It's also, I find, really, really important. And I just feel that a lot of Leon's work, it just sets on what both of those I learned in both of those books. It's like the closest thing to spiritual truth that I could find growing up.
Yeah. Yeah. How about for you, Shelby?
Oh, Laura and I have quite differing origin stories, I feel like. And so if I rewind a little bit of like uh, probably almost 10 years ago, I um was feeling out of alignment, but I didn't have the words for it. Like I had recently graduated nursing school, I was working in the hospital, and there was many moments to where I either was hearing voices or getting nudges from the universe, one or the other, being like, this isn't it. This isn't it. Like from a professional standpoint. And that eventually is what led me to coaching and like exploring this path that felt more in alignment. Um, but also kind of coinciding with switching specialties within nursing to become a nurse coach. Right after I got certified as a nurse coach, my mom sent me a planner in the mail to like be supportive. She sent me this planner and it had a cross engraved on the front. And I was raised like a version of Southern Baptists, and that is like its own sub niche within religion all in of itself. And I remember getting this planner in the mail and being so irrationally mad at my mom for sending me this planner. And I was kind of taken off guard of like, why is this making me so upset? So like a good little coach, I took it to my coach at the time and I was like, yo, I think I'm having an irrational response to this planner. Like, I know my mom didn't send it to me on purpose. And that kind of marked, I had no idea what deconstruction was or what any of that. I had no reference point for it, but it started happening to me all at once. So like I started my business and then there was a spiritual unfolding at the same time of pulling apart what I had been raised in, pulling apart what I had been taught. Like, is this true for me still? Just that deep questioning. And I mean, Laura's ridden shotgun beside me on this for like, gosh, 7 years. And Leon's work kind of found us. I mean, Laura found the book and then, like she said, she told everybody about it. I was one of probably the first people she told.
Yeah.
And then I was reading it and I was like, oh, there's this other way. There's this other way to relate to spiritual connection. There's this other way to relate with other people through spirituality when you have differing like foundations or backgrounds, which was very new for me. If anyone's familiar with like Southern Christianity, it's very one way or the highway. You are either right or wrong. And so this just like cracked open a whole realm of gray in the best way for me of like, you get to decide like how do you relate to it? And I would say that I'm still very much in like the great unknown of that and like redefining it and pulling things, piecing it all back together. But without coaching in general, I don't think that I would have had the tools or I wouldn't have been at the right place or the right time for this to happen. And there's still a chance I would be angry at that silly little planner that my mom sent me in the mail.
You know, it's interesting because your story, Shelby, you kind of, let's call it, woke up or became aware of this world. You were already a parent, right? You were certainly married. You were already a parent. Yeah.
Yep.
You were a business owner. So there's a lot of sort of stable aspects to your life. And this transformation can be quite disruptive in many ways. So what was it like to have all of these sort of stable pillars in your life, but then also kind of get existential about the meaning of life and where your life was going?
Yeah, that's a really good observation. I don't know that I've connected those dots before. Yeah, my first daughter was probably like 6 months old when all of this happened for the very first time. And I would also say that she was probably a catalyst too, to all of this of like, if I wasn't a mom, I don't know that I would have been so hungry to figure it out, to use air quotes here, because then it becomes of like, okay, well then what am I going to teach her? How am I going to teach her to relate to the world? The framework I was given doesn't feel correct for me anymore. So like now what? And I think that that was good fuel in my tank to explore. But like, I don't know, the short version, Jonathan, is like, thank God all of the other areas of my life were stable, like genuinely and truly. I think that I had walked out on my ER job at the time, started a business, was a new mom. So while things were stable, there was a lot of new in my life. So it makes a lot of sense that like, yeah, let's throw in a spiritual evolution as well at the same time. In this, it kind of like blends right in to the math equation real easy.
Yeah. So, and it's interesting. Just one question, and then I'm going to ask you something there, Laura. Is you mentioned that nursing wasn't the thing, and then you
hmm
kind of switched the quote unquote thing, but it was still around nursing and supporting nurses. And can you share a little bit about how nursing itself wasn't the thing, but supporting nurses became the thing?
hmm Yeah. I have known that I wanted to be a nurse since I was like 12. Like I've had this knowing for a really long time that I like to help people. I like to be of service to other humans and other people. And um I think that I had an idealistic picture in my head of what nursing was in the hospital. And while there were some moments that were so precious and so tender, and I'm so honored to have been someone's nurse, like, during their most vulnerable moments, their scariest moments, to be able to provide relief and comfort. Um, there was a disconnect for me because it felt like I was a cog in a broken system and I didn't have any power to influence it. I very much felt like this is just what we do as nurses. And yep, we kind of know we're setting up some patients for failure, but we don't have any other tools or resources to like get out of this just wheel of doom, which sounds really dramatic, but that's the way it felt to me at the time. And I tried really hard for about 5 years to make traditional nursing work. So I was a new grad. Um, and I worked on an amazing floor, actually. The nurses on that floor were incredible. And they took me under their wing. I feel like if I was going to have the best shot, like that was a really great place to begin. But then I got the travel bug and I went and did travel nursing. I worked all over the country in many different hospitals, kind of like searching for the place to where it all made sense of like, oh, this hospital is doing it well. Like we're doing a good job here. And I never found it. And so then in kind of like a last ditch attempt, I joined, I started working in the ER, which is like hysterical to me to look back on now. Like it's not working. So let's double down on the not working and go work in the ER. and, um, and I mean, it's like going to a war zone every day at work whenever you work in the ER. And, I didn't know at the time, like what a deep empath I was. I didn't know how much of just like my patients' hardships and traumas I carried around with me, and working in the ER just like poured gas on that. And I had a really hard time coping with the intensity of the ER, the patient loss in the ER, and how quickly you have to move on. So I worked in the ER for almost 2 years, again, in about 3 ERs across the country. And that's when I met Laura. It was when I was working in the ER, right before I quit. And I remember her encouraging me of like, they'll always need you back, but you better go find out if this is the new path for you. Like never a better time than right now to see if this is it. And it's just like a gut sense knowing of like this, the work I want to do with people is more proactive than reactive. And traditional medicine is reactive. And I just knew I could have been good at that job for the rest of my life and, gotten awards and done all the things, but I think it would have come at a price to my soul, to be honest.
How about for you, Laura? What was the deciding factor to transition from traditional nursing into private practice coaching?
Gosh, when I gave birth to my son, I became chronically ill. And for 3 years, I went to every specialist. I mean, the conventional medicine system separates you into like different pieces of matter. So like if your toe hurts, you go to the toe doctor. If you have an irregular heart rate, then you go to the heart doctor. If you've got a headache, you go to the neurologist. And I had this constellation of symptoms. So I was sent to all the different doctors to look at different pieces of me. And at the end of 3 years, I was almost disabled. I was on 14 medications. And my new primary care physician said to me that it was all in my head and that I really probably needed to work more on psychiatry. And I remember, and my sister was an ER nurse who's also a deep coach now as well, side note, but she had come with me to that appointment and I just left defeated and I'm crying because I'm like, first, they don't believe me that I'm in so much pain. They think I'm like trying to get drugs. They're treating me like I was like a drug addict, but I was in so much physical pain. And she was trying to advocate for me. She's like, there's nothing I can do to even advocate for you. And I just remember thinking spiritually, like, God would not put me through this for no reason. So like, what's the reason? And I remember having that really clear. And I also remember having the thought of, if I want to be well for my children, I'm going to have to figure this out on my own. There's no doctor. There's no expert that's going to fix me. And so it was like, that was a big turning point for me, is realizing I had to be my own advocate. Nobody cared about my health the way that I did. And I stopped displacing ownership of my physical well-being to doctors. And thank God I found a naturopathic doctor, went and saw her, and she did a 90-minute intake with me and listened to my story and wasn't taking notes and wasn't trying to diagnose. She just kept asking me more questions about me and like my stress levels and my childhood. And it was like, really like there was a deep coaching element even to the way that she did her intake, because it was very holistic. And at the end of that 90-minute session, she said, I don't know what's wrong with you, but there's something wrong with you and we'll figure it out. And I felt immediate relief. It was the first time someone believed me. And in 16 weeks, just through diet, exercise, she made me get a weekly massage, I remember. And she said, don't try to lose weight. Just eat these healthy things, get a weekly massage, like sleep as much as you can, take these supplements. And in 16 weeks, we had results back, but I knew exactly what was wrong with me and I was off all of my medications. And so as that was happening to me, I was working as an advice nurse for the same system that failed me. And then I remember one day I was getting calls from different women in their 30s with the same constellation of symptoms. And I realized if I told them how I got well, I would be fired. So I was like my job didn't allow me to help people. In fact, it would have, I would have been fired. And so I remember driving home from work that day. And by the way, I was making almost $100 an hour working part-time with full benefits for my whole family. It's the highest paid nursing job in the country. And it was like, by all means, the easiest job, lowest risk, highest pay, 4 6-hour shifts. And so that was like, that's I think important, because I remember thinking, of course, you've risen to the pinnacle of like the lowest stress, highest paying nursing job. And it's awful. Like like I could not do it. So I quit without notice. I told my husband I just was never going to go back. And I quit that day. And that was right before I found I think I just started nurse coaching, maybe my certification. So I think quitting, 7 days into a coaching training program, it puts a little fire underneath you to open a business. And so like the timing was perfect. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I am figuring it out, because there is no plan B for me. Like I can't go back to that system. So it sounds dramatic, but I just started taking nurses with me. Shelby was my first victim.
I'm jumping, you're coming. Let's go. Yeah.
Well, we're going to get into this because oftentimes, the question around what does it take to start a successful coaching practice, comes a lot of struggle with that.
Yeah.
And I've found that it is those that sort of, and asterisk disclaimer, I do not advocate for this. I don't think this is the best approach, but burning the ships does
It's so smart.
It incentivizes you to sink or swim,
Yeah. I do think, Jonathan, it is the best way. It's not the most logical way, though.
Yeah.
It's not, I agree. Big asterisks on that one, but that's what we both did.
Yeah.
You all wrote something related to this in the form that you each consistently chose the unknown. You each consistently chose to take risks and face challenges ahead. What was it inside of you that allowed you to trust in life and in that next step without knowing what that next step was going to be or whether it would work?
Mm.
Gosh. I know what mine is, which will be I love this audience that's going to be listening because I know you all will take this and probably know what I'm talking about. But
Hmm.
for me, when I started my business, I knew subconsciously that my husband was going to be fired. I don't know how I would know this. He was a fire captain in the Bay Area. He had been there for 10 years, really well liked leader in his department. And I just had this knowing that I had to kind of hurry because I was going to have to take care of our family. And it was not rational. I had talked to one coach about it one time, but it was just this thing I knew and it came true. He was fired about 2.5 years after I started my business. So for me, unfortunately, I think it was fear. It was subconscious fear of something I felt already happening. It was kind of like Spirit was saying, we don't have a whole lot of time to do this. So we're going to have to, like, you can't mess around here. Like, you're just going to have to keep taking steps into the darkness. And for me, that was what propelled me is I knew I was being called to take a different role in my family. Um, 100% that was mine. And what about you, Shelby? Because I feel like we were like woven together in that.
Yeah. Yeah, a little context. So Laura and I met in certification and we were partnered together for some like practice coaching, which is how our relationship started. But then for like the first year of our private practice, we were very much just friends, like cheering each other on the internet,
Mhm.
and we didn't join business-wise until a little while later. But th- I'm glad that you said fear. I was afraid that you were going to give some like high-level response because
Yeah.
mine was also fear too, in the sense of like I would do anything to not go back to the ER. I would do anything. And now that I have kids and now that's a little different. I would do anything for my family, including going back to the ER. But I can see the hospital where I had my very first job from the house I'm living in right now. And it is like a looming reminder for me on the horizon of like, hey girl, you better keep going or else, and I know rationally that there's 100 other options, but this is kind of the little game that I play with myself whenever it comes between choosing like perceived safety into the unknown. So that's absolutely how the fuel in my fire. Like I was so burned out. I was so just morally injured from working in the ER that like I would do anything to not go back. And that's pretty powerful juice to like
Yeah.
plow through a brick wall if you need to. Um, and then also too, I think when it began to shift for me out of fear was in 2021. I had an open heart surgery to repair an aneurysm. And I had like I don't know, what would you call that, Laura? Like an existential moment on the OR table, or like
Yeah.
a moment met face to face with my higher power. And there was obviously a lot of anxiety leading up to that. I had to wait for surgery for like 6 months. So there was this whole ceremony I was in waiting for this huge surgery that I didn't know that I was going to survive. And um whenever they were putting me under anesthesia, I've sedated people before and it always seems like instant. And for me laying on the table, it's like, oh my God, please, like I'm crying. I'm so worked up and I can't, like the drugs aren't kicking in fast enough. And, like I can feel them starting IVs. Like I can feel someone holding my hand being like, just keep breathing, Shelby. We're almost there. We're almost there. We're almost there. And then there was this moment where I heard this voice of, you did it. Like, you did it. And then I felt an overwhelming amount of peace in a way that I have not been able to replicate. And then I went out and I woke up later in the ICU. And I've thought a lot. I've thought a lot about that moment over the years. And I think in two parts of like, yeah, I did it. I survived. I made it to surgery to kind of like hand over the baton to the team to save my life. And then I also did it like, I'm a dreamer, Jonathan. I got a long list of things I want to do in this life. And while that bucket list for me was incomplete, like I didn't do all the things that I wanted to do before this like moment of getting to fake my death here. But like all of the important things, like the going for it, the risking it, the choosing the unknown, choosing my soul's alignment over like what I should be doing, like
Yeah.
there was such relief for me in that moment of the list is incomplete, but you did the important parts. And that has just that's like ingrained in me to where even if it all still fails, even if it all still doesn't work, I honored myself. That's awesome.
Beyond awesome. I cannot emphasize anymore how extraordinary you two are, given that truly, look at all the factors that are on display here. You
Mm.
each had pretty serious health scares in different ways. You're raising small children. You're having career existential questions coming and transitioning into something completely unknown. In one case,
Mhm.
a partner is losing their job. What allowed you or helped you to move through all of that in the way that you did?
I mean, all the big decisions were made with a coach the whole time. I
Mhm.
don't know that Shelby and I have ever been without someone that we trusted, that we were meeting with semi-regularly and having conversations about the fear and the actions and the vision and the why. And so I also like I tell all of our clients that we mentor that you have to believe in coaching to sell coaching, to make a living as a coach. Like there has to be this reverence for the modality itself. And the best way to have that reverence is to be a product of it, like the best product of it. And I think that I was always the best product of whoever I was working with. Like I never went to my coaching sessions and got 60%. Like it didn't
Mhm.
matter. Like I was just going to get 100% out of each one every single time. So for me, I feel like that was the unfair advantage is I always had support. And then we had each other too. So we had like a really strong coaching community. And then my husband became a coach. My sister became a coach. Like, so now like my whole world is filled with people that think the impossible is possible. So it's like, that makes it easier too. Just like being in community and being surrounded by and in contact with people who do things that are scary. That becomes the norm. So I attribute a lot of our decisions and the doubling down on perceived risk as being in constant contact with a good coach.
Mhm.
Really, I don't think
Yeah,
we would have
someone
done it
who's
without it.
true. I agree. Someone's able to hold your vision even when it feels shaky for you. I remember waiting for my heart surgery and we were thinking about enrolling a group for something Laura and I were working on, and I went and asked my coach of like, okay, this is great if we sell out this group, but like, what if I die during surgery? Or what if I have a stroke and then I can't speak afterwards? And she didn't miss a beat, Jonathan. She just said, I'll step in for you. Like, if that happens, I'll step in for you, but keep going. And like, I don't know, that's so delusional to like, but, but I was like, okay, yeah, you'll step in for me. And then I like just kept going, like there's, I think that especially healers called to this type of work that God, you just don't have to like do it by yourself. There's no reason. And I hope that what comes across in this interview is that Laura and I have had help every single step of the way. Every single step. There's never been a moment where we've been or like that we just got lucky or like we've invested at every chance.
Or that you had to carry the full weight of what you were going through on your own
Yeah,
shoulder?
Yeah.
totally. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it like in the early years of your private practice?
Mm. I was like so wily. Like I look back on my first year and I'm actually really proud of her because I did not hire a coach out of certification. I just tried to figure it out on my own for the first 6 months and I opened an office. I just started charging people whatever amount I thought I could. I didn't have any, like, I just didn't know what I was doing, but I was constantly offering free coaching to everybody. So my first 6 months, my goal was to coach as much as possible. And that was really without listening to that wasn't advised to me. I think I learned it from a book maybe. I'm so grateful for that because 6 months into owning a private practice, I was doing live events in my community and people were loving them. I was getting good feedback. I was barely making ends meet, but I wasn't going into debt, which was great because I had all these expenses. I paid for like a $4,000 website that was terrible, like things like that. But I made the primacy of my focus how many hours a week I could serve another human being. And then you get better at everything else because of the repetitions that you have. And so I feel like I learned the hard way. And Shelby, I'll let her tell her story, but I learned a lot from her too. And we would ping pong back and forth. We were like doing weird things and like, hey, this isn't working for me. And is this working for you? So we kind of leaned on one another because nobody else was really doing it from our class that graduated. Nobody else was doing what we were doing. I mean, we had to make it work because it was our job. We didn't keep a job. So it's like we were tossed into the deep end and just trying things like all over the it's just weird stuff.
My favorite story of Laura's during this time is how she was like in a sauna with people where you're not on your phone. And she's just like, hey, can I coach you? Like, hey. Just like the best, most
I went to the
audacious.
sauna every day. It was part of my business plan because you had good conversations in there.
Wherever you can find clients.
Yeah. Yeah, I did hire a business coach right out of the gate, and I am so thankful every day that she was worth her salt because I think that hiring the right type of business support of when you're brand new is really, really important because you can get sucked into like the vortex of $4,000 websites and funnels and ads and all this stuff, right? But I mean, I just, yeah, got lucky and I ended up working with her for 2 years, but this is when I quit my job in the ER. I was probably like 10 weeks pregnant and I had just started my practice. Oh, and at the same time, this is when I found out about my aneurysm too. So like this is all happening like at the same time. And for me, I didn't know what I was doing. Obviously no business background. Like I was, 26. I feel like I was pretty young, just married like the year before. And I just wanted to be told what to do. And my coach was really good at that of like, here's the checklist, follow the protocol. You can do this. You can say this. And the first proposal call I ever had with a potential client, they said yes. And I was covered in sweat head to toe, like freaking out. And she said yes. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can do this. Like I can do this. Look at me go. And that was kind of like enough. It was a little bit of like chasing the dopamine hits for me for the first 4 months. And right around when my daughter, or a few months before she was born, is when I got my first like slew of no's to where it's just like, I got like 5 or 6 no's in a row and it was very terrible, like very awful. It was not fun because then you're like, wait, I was getting all these yeses. Am I not supposed to be doing this anymore? Am I even good? Like, blah, blah, blah. You start this like mental tornado. And gosh, I had to pause for maternity leave kind of in that headspace and then take a huge break, learn how to be a mom, and then come back about 4 months after she was born. And the the mental game in the first year is why you need a coach so deeply. It's why because I had talked myself out of it every week of like, I can't do this. This is too hard. I'm not good, especially when I started getting no's. Like your ego is just raging because it's all uncomfortable and it's all new and you're kind of not great at it yet. And so we're just looking for any reason to stop. And like Laura said, of like, I never went and got 60% out of a coaching session. Same for me of like, even when I didn't want to show up, even when I didn't want to do the work or the homework, I wasn't going to come to my call empty-handed, even if I told my coach, hey, this was really hard for me. I didn't want to do it this week, but I did it. That's, I think, what allowed me to put one foot in front of the other for probably the first 18 months, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah. Looking back now, what would you each say was the biggest lever that helped move things forward and creating sort of a bit of success for you?
Hmm. I hired a really good business coach 6 months out and was in a neat space, and, um, I think I learned important things about business on how to do. I was willing to do, but I didn't like, once I knew what to do, then it wasn't really, a matter of if it was gonna work or not, it was a matter of how long would it take. And so that really helped me, right? Because it's like this person who was really successful, who had a long career before she was a business mentor, told me what to do, and I could do what she told me to do. And I figured if I just kept doing what she told me to do, it eventually would work in a way that felt sustainable. And that was the truth. So I feel like I had the tenacity to keep taking action, and I was used to being afraid. But when I knew what to do, then I started having traction. And like, things started to work. My sales skills developed, I raised my prices, and I was just able to feel more like a business owner. I think your self-concept takes about a year or 2 years to even change. And so I think that got me to that point where I had the self-awareness of like, I'm a business owner. Like I have enough skills, I'm never going to go hungry as long as I don't give up. But I think it was a combination of knowing what to do and then the commitment to that I wasn't going to quit for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what were some of those what to dos that started to work for you?
I mean, always offer 1 to 2 free sessions to everybody. And so you lead with service. So essentially, you're just making the world a better place. You're relieving suffering and offering value. And then you're entering into relationships, and some of those relationships have a natural turning point where they turn into paid relationships. So there was never selling or marketing or trying to get people to buy my thing. It was, how much do you need to serve? How many relationships do you need to have? And as nurses, we could do that. That didn't feel icky to me. I could do that all day long. And I'm so grateful for that because there's lots of business owners and business coaches that don't teach that way. And especially for like more transformational coaches, we just resonate with the service mindset so much more.
Mm-hmm.
And Shelby, what about for you?
I the one moment that jumps out to me to where things got less stressful and I could like see the bigger picture. I had set a goal to like sign 4 clients in 1 month, which is kind of like pushing the edge. Like that's kind of a lot. And also it felt doable for me at the time. I had just gotten 3 yeses. Of course, 4 yeses felt like the natural next step. And that's like when my season of no's started. It was just like, no, 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 one right after the other. And this was probably like one of the very first time of 100 times that I cried hard on one of my coaching calls. And my coach at the time, she looked at me and she goes, Shelby, are you gonna go hungry because you didn't sign these clients? And I was like, no. She goes, are you gonna be homeless because you did not sign these clients? And I was like, no. She goes, are you going to be naked with your newborn on the street corner because you did not sign these clients? And I was like, no. And she looked at me and she goes, then chill out. Then chill out. And it was like a snap, like, just like a good, I mean, that's really direct, but it was a snap for me of like, dude, relax. Like it's allowed to take some time here and you're probably going to get told no 100 more times in the future. So like, take a deep breath and breathe. And something about that moment, just like I was so hyper focused on doing what she told me. And if I didn't hit the mark, then I was wrong, or I don't know, I wasn't good enough or whatever. And then in that moment, it's like I was able to like zoom out and like, okay, if this takes 5 years, will I be okay? And at the time, the answer was yes. Like if this takes 10 years, are you still here? Are you still committed to figuring it out? And the answer was yes. And so I think being able to like have some space to breathe, like allowed me to relax a little bit and
Yeah.
trust the process and trust the unfolding and not be so hyper focused on just like the 30-day arbitrary marks I set for myself, or else that's a super easy way just to beat yourself up every month.
Yeah.
It's so true. So true. So at what point did you come together and were like, we should start something.
Well, you know how like people don't call each other out of the blue anymore? Like that's not really like a super thing. I mean, I call like my parents out of the blue, but Laura called me out of the blue one day and I was like, God, this is weird. I hope everything's all right. And we weren't the kind of friends that did that. Like
No.
that's not what we did. And so I answered and she was like, hey, I have an idea. And I was like, okay. And she goes, you and I are the only two that are gaining traction here in our business, and our community needs help. Like I think that we can help our nurse coaching community learn how to make money. So because Laura and I have both pretty deeply rooted whys in like helping healthcare elevate and be better and do better. And you know, if nurse coaches are not making any money, then like what are we doing? You know, money
Yeah.
money is a service done in the world. And so I mean that was like our first business agreement. That was almost at the 2-year mark for both of us, and just like, okay, I'll call you next week and we'll see what this means. And yeah, that's where it all began. Was just like this random call, 4 p.m.
Yeah.
Yep.
I remember that. Well, everybody just kept asking me, well, how are you getting clients? And how are you doing this? And I was just doing all these things, like getting on the phone and telling them. And the coach I hired at the time was like $12,000, and they didn't want to do that. They didn't want to, that was too much money for them. And so I was like helping them already. And then I was thinking, you know, I have 2 small children. They're 2 and 3. She has, you know, Shelby has a newborn. I don't feel comfortable like doing this, starting this other business the way it is. But if we did it together, then if one of our kids were sick, we could cover each other. So my thought was, we're both 2 years in. We have more success than our community. We're both still new, but together we could likely help. We'd provide enough value. And I think we sold out our first business group in 2 weeks. And that was the first of, I mean, it was like our community was so hungry because there was nothing, that it just started to become this thing. And I held on to my one-on-one practice for another probably 2.5 years. And then at some point I realized if I really wanted to help the nurse coach community, I had to go all in on it. And then we both kind of just decided, okay, this is our thing. I guess for now, this is going to be our only focus. And as soon as we did that, our profession exploded. I mean, I think it was important for us to do that. Like, I think that Spirit was having us do that in that way. It was not what we set out to do. It's not what
No.
we thought we were going to do. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it about each of you that you felt like partnership made sense outside of each of you were, you know, finding success and all that?
I mean, we were each other's first peer coaches. So the first time I ever was a quote unquote coach, I coached Shelby. And the first time she ever coached, she coached me. So we had that, like, right, that we were each other's first. And then we were both kind of the only, I mean, Shelby's the only other person that was like me, where it's like, yeah, we should just go for it. And she'd be like, yeah, I guess you're right. I guess we should just go for it. So there was like this resonance there with, now I'm looking back on it and it could be perceived as reckless, but we were just, nobody else was like that. Like nobody else had the kind of conversations that Shelby and I had.
Yeah. I also wish that I could look back and I'm like, I put Laura into a pro and con chart and I was like, these are the things that are great about Laura. And these are the things I can learn to live with. But it just, I don't, Laura and I are pretty intuitive, and in the moment it just felt correct. Like it just felt right. And now looking back, I know how risky partnerships are. I know how often they don't work. Like there's so much more that I know now that I'm so glad that I didn't know then, because we were able to just like link arms and just run really quickly, to be honest. And so I am grateful for what I didn't know back then, because it might have scared me out of it, but it's continuing to work. And here we are. Like this is probably the most conscious relationship I have in my life. Like the most aware. Hey, we've definitely grown into it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, business partnership is a marriage. You're each second marriages. What are the keys to making it work?
Well, we have agreements. too. In the nurse coaching world, we have these agreements for coaching relationships, right? And it's like, this is a safe and confidential space. You know, you're in charge of how deep we go in this conversation. And, you know, there's like
Yeah.
these rules of the rodeo that we have, and we have kind of adopted them into our relationship right out of the gate. And I think the biggest one is just like, if anything feels weird, speak up. Like our livelihood depends on our ability to be vulnerable, and also to be able to assume positive intent from one another has been super helpful. But I think that both of us being willing to swim in the deep end of, like, we weren't 1 foot in, 1 foot out on our business. Both, like, we're both sole providers for our family now. So like literally our business pays the bills. So we have to kind of live in the deep end together.
Yeah.
Um, so that's my take on it, Laura. I don't know if you
Yeah.
have anything different.
Yeah. I know the way that I'm built, I'm not built to be a solopreneur. So I have a very happy marriage and I have a very happy business marriage, and I do best in partnership with the right people. And so for me, any business that I could imagine would either have a 50-50 partner, or I would hire somebody and they'd become a 50-50 partner. I don't think I'm just not built to run a business solo. And I just feel like we got super lucky. But I also feel like from like a spiritual standpoint, our industry needed to be amplified. And I think we were both tapped on the shoulder to do it. And we just said yes first, is what I think
Mm-hmm.
happened. I feel like, like when a book needs to be born, I think a lot of authors are tapped on the shoulder in hopes that one of them says yes. And I feel like for Shelby and I, it was kind of like, hey, something needs to happen here. We want to amplify this. We need leaders to step to the front and start paving the way. And I think we've just constantly said yes. Like we haven't shrunk back from that. In the last year's been the most uncomfortable with launching Nurse Life Coach Academy. Like talk about unknown. It's unknown times 5. And I think that when I start to feel like, I don't know if this is going to work, Shelby will just say something like, in no universe does this not work. And then that's enough for me. And the same with Shelby. I'm like, we got it. It's like this just this subtle way of like being what each other needs to be in our lowest moments, which I'm so grateful for. It makes it really hard to fail in that dynamic.
Yeah, you're a true unit that self-calibrates
Yes.
in moments of need.
Yeah.
Very powerful.
I like that word, self-calibrates. That's a good one. Pocket that one for later.
I use it. Yeah, there's a flow that, I find with my wife and I, that we get like the unspoken, that we just fill in the gaps of the needs of the household. It's not a conversation. It's not like, hey, you go take care of cleaning the living room and I'll take care of our son. And it just says, it's a sort of unspoken, we're like an entity now, that kind of self-corrects, as we go, which is a beautiful place to be in partnership. But it's not often a place that people land in, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. I feel like with our business coaching clients, in some ways, we play that role for them in those very like vulnerable beginning stages where, I think that that's part of the role of the business coach, is like the inevitable moment when when the new coach starting a business feels like, I can't do this. This isn't working. I'm terrible. I suck. I should go back. Just that constriction moment that is inevitable, by the way, for anyone listening. To have the right person to self-calibrate or to co-calibrate with you in that moment is imperative. And I think we're both lucky we have strong romantic relationships as well. So we have it at home and we have it at work, which we're so grateful for. But I think that's what we try to also be aware of when we're supporting clients is, yes, we're teaching them a skill set, because it's a whole skill set you have to learn. But I'm also watching for the inevitable moment where they would likely quit, because that just happens. And then like normalizing it. It's like, all right, quit this week. We'll come back next week and talk about it. If you still feel the same, we can quit again. As opposed to having it be so serious. And so while we do that for one another, I feel like it's taught us how to do it better for our clients that we're partnered with for a particular moment in time as they're birthing something new. Yeah, I'd say that about
Mhm.
that.
You mentioned something around entrepreneurship as a path to self-actualization and as a healing modality. Can you share more on that?
Yeah. I mean, I hear this in lots of circles now, but becoming an entrepreneur, the decision to become an entrepreneur when you haven't been one, um, is a process by which every fear that you have will float up to the surface and asked to be looked at. And it's just the nature of it. It's vulnerable. It's the unknown. It is, you're constantly challenged in different ways. Um, it is the perfect playground to like to have spiritual mastery, in my opinion. It's difficult. You can't stay in business for 5 years and not, in my opinion, not in this work. And so it's almost like signing up for grad school. You're like, all right, I did this coaching thing, and now I'm going to sign up for like spiritual grad school by launching my own practice.
You double click into that, what you
Yeah.
mean by being sort of a spiritual
Yeah.
master boot camp?
Yeah, it is the thoughts of I am not good enough, I am not worthy, I am going to cause harm, I am being icky, I am all those like those interpersonal things that come up. I feel like you're constantly being asked to either meet them or shrink back from them, like over and over again. And then once you find a groove in business, it'll inevitably change. And so then you're asked to do that again. Well, when you've done that 5 or 6 times, there's very little things that can happen in your life that you're afraid to face or to get through. And so what it builds is, I don't know how I'm going to solve it, but I trust that future Laura's got it figured out. And like, that's insane confidence because you can just tolerate long periods of time of discomfort without it affecting you in ways that it used to. And I don't know of any other thing that can do that for me.
There's an interesting, and the way you said it right now, there is an interesting relationship between our current self and our future self, where
Yeah.
sometimes the relationship is, let me do the hard thing today so that my future self thanks me for it.
Yeah.
And other times, like you said, let me trust that my future self can figure out how to get me out of this situation. And I have no interest to right now.
Yeah. It's easier to sleep. I mean, right? It's like if I trust Laura in April of 2025 to figure it all out, then in March, if I have a bunch of uncertainties, I can sleep. I don't have to worry. And it's like it's an awesome relationship with the future. So the future is not scary. I'm like, well, April Laura is going to be even better than March Laura. So like
Mhm.
she's constantly got my back. And because of the growth trajectory that I'm in, and so when somebody says, we should do this, it doesn't matter how big it is. Like immediately I'm like, yeah, we totally should. And that's automatic. It's not calculated. It's somewhat, we call it like a reality distortion field. I think I've created a permanent reality distortion field between me and my future self that is working very well right now. It works well. Yeah.
Well, and that's where entrepreneurship as a path to self-actualization is not a given. It is not just it. That's not the way everybody takes it. It just so happens
Yeah.
that each of your constitution is that of sort of deepening and
Yes.
spirituality and being tapped into something more than yourselves,
Yeah.
which is where I find it amazing that you've incorporated spiritual elements with the Deep Coaching Intensive soon, but also with Leon's book into
Yeah.
your programming to sort of bring in that spiritual aspect to the coaches that go through your program.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of moments, especially in the early years, where holding your dream, your vision does feel too big to do it by yourself. And I see most of our clients that wrestle the most with this like growth evolution is when they are not connected to something bigger
Yeah.
to themselves, when they're not rooted in a higher power or spirit, the universe, however we want to label it. They because it's all on them, right? There's no one like, we can help carry the load with them as their mentor and be the sounding board and all those things, but there's no replacement for their mentor and be the sounding board and all those things, but there's no replacement for that piece, in my opinion. And if we have me on the path, it is, like that's an active choice that
Yeah.
you have to make. That's not given just because you start a business. Like that mindset
Yeah.
is earned.
It is earned. Yeah. Through hard effort and a lot of no's and a lot of rejection and all those things.
Yeah.
How do you help coaches coming into the industry? Because you mentioned each of you, fear was a motivating factor, and it is a motivating. It's, we kind of demonize fear in many respects, but
Mhm.
we have part of our brain that is here to protect us. And so fear
Yeah.
is a very important emotion to have to help us chart the path forward. But it's also an unsustainable resource over the
Yeah.
long term. So what's the interplay that you see between trust and fear in building a business?
Mm. Yeah, I always say fear doesn't burn as clean, but when it's present, use it.
Yes.
And it will likely be present because there's so much new, right? So, and then I like the thought of when we're talking to new coaches of like, what's your relationship with new? And all of our clients so far have been, not all of them, I've helped other people in business as well, but most of them are nurses. And so it's funny because nurses specifically have jobs where we do hold lives in our hands. It's not like the phrase, like it's not rocket science, or it's not, brain surgery. Like when you're a nurse, if you make an error, people die. And so there is a real seriousness with that role. And for us, it's been like untethering that from the coaching role. And it's like the worst case scenario is that you just love somebody and listen to them. Like that's it. The worst case scenario is you leave the world a better place. That's our, like in coaching, in the service that we provide. And from that perspective, it's like the lowest risk endeavor I can imagine in entrepreneurship. We're not opening a tire shop or a restaurant with $500,000 loan. We are selling a service that requires us to love somebody for an hour. And so I think it's just constantly reframing. And I think as much fear as I've had over the years, I've also had like moments of like the feeling of totally doing what spirit wants me to do and then enjoying the rewards of being in that moment over and over again. So it's a push pull. And I think it always is. Like running from fear or letting fear motivate you when it's present, and then also being present to like the gifts that it brings as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I love coaching around fear. It's like, I love reading about fear and how it like influences our everyday decisions. And I think in the beginning, there's so much unchecked fear that new coaches have just in general, because it's all like Laura was saying, everything is new. So it's a really good way to flare up your fear and for all of these like what if thoughts to come into play. And I think within like the first year or two of business, we're kind of like tending to this fear, the fear of the what if I fail, the what if I'm not good enough, the what if I accidentally do harm, the what if. And we get to like tend to those as they boil up and challenge them of like, is this real? Is this not real? And if it is real, if it is your truth, like let's be with that. Let's untangle it together. Like let's see. I always think that fear is kind of the canary in the coal mine for like a call to like love ourselves on a deeper level. It's just it's the part of you that has the microphone begging for your attention. And so can we slow down enough to be with it rather than shoving it to the side or, ignoring it? And I think as coaches, as conscious business owners, as healers, if you choose to accept this work, like confronting your fears over and over and over again, it makes you a better coach too. Because then you're able to be with your client's fear as well, because you've been here before. So tending to my own fear has just made me be the calm for my clients whenever they're in it big time. Of like, yeah, I've been here before. I can remember how this feels. You're not crazy. Let's be here together. I also know that this doesn't last forever either. But if you are experiencing fear, I would argue that you're probably doing it right at some point. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the power of a regulated nervous system sitting across from you as
Oh,
you
yeah.
are
Yes.
activated, you know?
Mhm.
Yes. So
I also,
good. Yeah.
yeah. I also think your method, your approach of having as many coaching conversations as possible is such a brilliant approach because it allows the coaches to be in their sweet spot of developing relationships, and that's
Yeah.
probably their strength in all of this, and sort of alleviate some of those fears
Yeah.
while they're also being taught how to build a business alongside it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because the reality, I don't know how you all feel of building a coaching practice, is that 80% is working on the business, 20% is working in the business, at least in the beginning. You know,
Yes.
I tell coaches coming into the industry that you're not actually going to be doing that much coaching in the beginning compared to the amount of
Yeah.
time you're investing working on the business.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you all feel about that and how you sort of
Mm.
help set set expectations for new coaches.
I think if you're not coaching, you don't have a coaching business, is what I often say. And so I don't recommend going more than 14 days without a session. I don't care if you have to coach your grandma for free. Like you
Perfect.
should, like if you aren't coaching regularly, that is the wind in your sail. You're building your sailboat. The wind is the coaching conversations, the regular coaching conversations, and everything else in business emanates from. And so when we get too focused on like building the rudder and we've gone a month and a half with no wind, then we're like dead in the water and it starts to not make sense. But as long as there's like a little bit of wind, then everything else can be built around that. And I find, I mean, we've had 500 people go through our programs. The top 25, that's what they did. So it's like not even us guessing. It's like us watching. They just kept, they had the mantra of just coach my butt off. Okay, forget about all the other stuff. Like quiet the noise. Let's just coach this week. And so I think if we can keep that 20%, keep the main thing, the other 80 is easier to tend to because the other 80 isn't necessarily super fun either all the time. Yeah. I think
So
we
true.
scare a lot of people away. We could probably sell a lot more business coaching if we didn't tell the truth.
But again, you're absolutely right about having
Yeah.
those coaching conversations. You must be coaching. You know, that's
Yes.
where the
Mhm.
magic happens. And
Yeah.
that's also the best mechanism for sales is
Mhm.
having someone
Yeah.
experience what it's like working with you
Yeah.
ultimately.
Yep. Yeah. I have heard so many coaches be like, Shelby, I can't figure out Stripe, or I can't figure out my Google Workspace, or I can't figure out this, that, or the other. And then because they're coaching on the sideline and then they have a person be like, how do I pay you? This has been so helpful. What's the next step here? And it's like this natural evolution. Then all of a sudden, Jonathan, they figure it out. They figure out the tech stuff, like, cause
Money,
it's go time.
yeah.
Yeah, it's go time. And so, yeah, I it is so intentional the way that we teach people, and we coach a lot of folks through the initial like kicking and screaming of like, I don't want to do it that way, or this doesn't make sense to me. And it's like, my friend, if you can just be coaching, I promise everything else falls into place.
Yeah.
I promise. And that's probably why Laura and I were able to keep going at such a stride in the beginning, is because we were coaching frequently every week, all the
Mhm.
time, in the weeds with real people. Like it made all of the other stuff feel real, all the websites and the
Yeah.
emails and the whatever. It just puts more context around it.
What would you say are the characteristics of those top 25% that allows them to do what they do?
Mm. I have a couple that come to mind. Um, I feel like the top 25 coaches have been coaches their whole life. They just didn't know what it was called. I hear that all the time of like, I kind of been doing some version of this. I just didn't know what I was doing. It's like this deep calling to be a part of the human experience with others. So I think that's those top 25. It's not that they were geniuses in marketing or had a social media following. Like I think that it can look like that. It was more of um their presence. I noticed something about them and their presence pretty early on. Um
Mhm.
And then from a business standpoint, it is the ones that made coaching 100 hours, the main focus above all things for an extended period of time. That's really it. Another side note too is their primary relationship was supportive. I would say that's another like circumstance that we see tied in. So like being surrounded, like your main person being on board for the ride with you is helpful.
Yeah. I get asked this question a lot from our community of like, Shelby, what makes special people special? And my answer is always that they choose. They choose to be special. And they show up for the work. They follow the process. They follow like the cookie crumbs of success that we have left behind of like, you can build or burn 4 weeks on a website if you want to, but we just recommend waiting a couple more months and then we can circle back to it. Like they are just open and receptive to what works. But I think above like the biggest overarch here is just that they choose. They choose to be in on the roller coaster. It's not that they like choose to be successful in a way that bypasses them from all of the work, but they choose to be on the ride because we've told them it's going to be a ride. And they're like, okay, all right, I hear you. I'm on board. Let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the business side. And on the personal side, Laura was alluding to a bit of an it factor. And that it factor can feel abstract and like, how do I work towards an it factor? But really the it factor is ultimately a full commitment to yourself and your own transformational journey. Ultimately that then, you then feel it from that person. Like, wow, this person's really been through the thick of it. You sense it in their presence. And that is part of the difference that I see in coaches who kind of have it that, is just a gravitational pull of I can trust you and I want to sort of be in space with you versus others that are, intellectually wanting to be a coach, but they still have some work to do. And that's okay. It's all a process, but it's also reality,
As long as you're on the path.
That's it.
That's it. Yeah. I'm like thinking of some of our top performers and I'm going to use air quotes. They quote unquote were the messiest on our calls. Like they didn't come to calls as like the A student of like, I did all my stuff and I did my reach outs and I coached 10 hours this week. They came crying saying, I don't think I want to do this anymore, Laura. Like it just like the vulnerable, the mess. I think that it factor requires you to acknowledge that you are a mess and I am a mess and Shelby is a mess. And it's you can't quantify it. It's not intellectual. It is I don't know. It's you can spot it when you see it and you feel it. In the deep coaching community, you all already have it. If you're in the deep coaching circle, like I think compared to like the nurse coaching world, you guys all have it. So don't even be listening to this worrying that if you have it or don't. Believe me, you have it. You do. Because you're there. Like you don't get there by accident. It's just you're on the path if you're in this world for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The deep coaching intensive takes you there, whether you're there or not.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't even show up there if you were. You know what I mean? Like it wouldn't even appeal to you.
It's so true. It's true.
You guys have a special little bubble. You guys really do.
It is a unique space for sure. If you could each leave listeners with an invitation or something to reflect on or practice in their own business journeys, what would it be?
That feels like a loaded question. I have to pick one of 10 here. I'm going to just do a very intellectual, matter-of-fact one that maybe you can tuck away. The only way it doesn't work is if you quit. That's it. Really. That's the one rule.
Yeah. The one that was coming up for me was like, are you just willing to try? If you don't have the next 10 steps figured out, can you at least do the next right thing?
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Is there anything that you haven't shared that would be worth sharing in this space before we close?
Yeah, I have one that really helped me. you'll likely overestimate what you can do in year 1 and you completely underestimate what you can do in 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Ditto. There's the Dunning-Kruger effect. If you guys have never heard of that before, go ahead and give it a quick Google, but it's like about being at the peak of Mount Stupid and you don't know what you don't know. And like, wow, Lauren, I have been here repetitively over the years of like, that doesn't seem too hard. Let's do it. And wow, that thought has gotten us a long way. And you know, then you get into the valley and there's this whole other part. But just because you're not where you want to be at the end of year 1, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything of what's possible for the years to come. You've laid a foundation and it's only up from here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to end with a very, very early sneak peek at a partnership that we have between you all and the Deep Coach or the Center for Transformational Coaching. So these brilliant people are helping us create a business program for the Deep Coaches, which we are so excited for. As you can hear, these two women are extraordinary and brilliant and have been through it and have helped over 500 people build their private coaching practice. So what a gift, what a privilege it is to have them support us in creating a program for our Deep Coaches, recognizing that building a business is tough, doing it alone is not easy or advised, and that there are systems that we can and processes, as you've been hearing, and that they've been alluding to in here, that can really help you to fulfill your dreams, you know, of really making this your thing. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I remember a very early conversation that I had with Leon, and I remember a thought I had early as a business coach, and it's like, if the talented coach doesn't figure out a way to monetize the skill, then it is likely that the skill will not be given to the world in full of, like in a nature, unless you're independently wealthy, which is wonderful. But for all of us that have to put a certain amount of energy into how we pay our bills and we feed our families, if we don't learn to monetize the coaching skill itself, then it's a lot of like wasted good in the world. And so then it became like my ethical responsibility to learn how to monetize it so that I could do more of it for longer periods of time with more people. That really helped me in the beginning, like making it my ethical responsibility to learn how to monetize it so that I could keep doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. We are so excited and so honored to be. I've been in like the DCI bubble for almost 2 years at the time of recording this. So I'm like in the deep coaching community, in learning and all the things. And my life was first like elevated by the modality of coaching and then has been completely just turned on its head in the best way. I have more meaning. I have more value in my life. I feel like I'm really squeezing the juice out of all my lemons over here because of deep coaching. And like Laura's alluding to, we would love to play a role in help this community learn so that other people can have this feeling too.
Yeah.
It is already happening. Thank you both. Laura, we appreciate you both. This was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us today. To learn more about today's guest, visit our podcast landing page at www.podcast.centerfortransformationalcoaching.com. You'll find links to their website, social media, and anything else they might want to share there. And if you're curious to explore more about our work, our trainings, or the deep coaching approach, you'll find everything at www.centerfortransformationalcoaching.com. A new episode of this podcast releases every 2 weeks, so please subscribe wherever you listen to stay up to date. Until next time, stay present, embrace love, and continue sensing into what life is calling you toward. See you soon.